Mr. Chair, I'll just point out to you that in beautiful Georgian Bluffs where I'm at, the internet is not very good. So if I fade out, I'll try to come back and.
All right, thanks, Dwight.
All right, Rob, whenever you want to start the recording. So, Mr. Chair, we have everyone here except for Councillor Woodbury at this time.
All right, thank you, Heather. So it is 9:31. We'll call this long-term committee of management meeting to order for November 23rd, 2021. Just want to remind the elected members of their obligation to declare a pecuniary interest or an interest. Seeing nothing, if anything should arise, you may declare at that time. We have long-term care report CM 23-21 regarding the long-term care COVID-19 status update be received for information. Can I have a mover to get that on the floor, please? Moved by Dwight and seconded by Barb. I think, Jennifer, you're taking us through this one.
I am, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is the long-term care COVID update, just providing an overview of changes since we last met. So there's a lot on the agenda today, so I'll give a high-level summary. Regarding vaccinations, on November 3rd, it was announced that there would be a rollout for boosters, booster shots of COVID-19 vaccine for all long-term care staff, students, volunteers, including our designated care partners, and just for interest's sake, also high-risk individuals who, and the spacing is 6 months from their previous dose. So the homes have been preparing to roll out clinics to support staff and designated care partners in getting that booster shot. Mandatory COVID-19 vaccination has been discussed at lots of our meetings over the past number of months in terms of what was going to happen, and the province did update a directive outlining requirements for mandatory vaccination for all long-term care home staff. The deadline for all staff to have had at least one COVID-19 vaccination was November 15th. And the final deadline for having both doses is December 13th. And that deadline was extended to support the NACI recommendation on the spacing between first and second dosing. So the chart in this report is as of November 10th. As of November 15th, we had 97% of our team members have had at least one dose, but most have had two. They're across the three homes, which is just over 560 staff. There are about 15 to 17 employees who are waiting for their second dose. And by December 13th, that number will be 100% of our staff are fully vaccinated. Surveillance testing, we do continue to do surveillance testing, rapid testing. We do rapid testing for any visitors who are not vaccinated or partially vaccinated or choose not to disclose. We also do random testing, and that's required by the ministry directive, and that randomized testing needs to be weekly, it needs to be different shifts, and the rule is more than one swab taken during a random testing. So we have a chart arranged for the homes, and they do this testing weekly. IPAC strategies, we continue to focus on our infection prevention and control audits and practice various scenarios. Our clinical specialist, Dena, has been providing tabletop exercises across the organization and have proved to be a really great learning tool. The teams have also rolled out their influenza vaccination clinics, and that continues, and the chart in the report gives a to-date status of the influenza vaccination uptake. On October 27th, the Ministry of Long-Term Care released information related to their proactive inspections program. This is a bit of a reboot of the RQI inspection process. Over the next 2 years, the ministry aims to recruit a significant number of long-term care inspectors and support staff, which will double the current number. It's anticipated that there will be a ratio of 1 inspector for every 2 homes. The new inspection process is called Proactive Inspections Program, and it's not significantly different from the previous inspection program that was called the RQI. It continues to use the inspection protocol documents. That's what the inspectors use. It's an audit tool. We have access to those audit tools and are able to use them in our own planning and preparation. And so the homes are working on going through that information again and kind of that getting back to fundamentals, getting back to basics, going through those documents and preparing. A little update on our designated care partner program. I'm really proud of this achievement. Advantage Ontario is the association with which we belong to, and they held their annual awards celebration in September. And our designated care partner program received an honorable mention for the Innovation and Excellence Award for supporting seniors. This category recognized an innovation program in the provision of care services for seniors, and we're really pleased that our program has been a part of making change across the province. Really proud of the teams for their commitment to it, and really thankful for all of our essential care partners, our designated care partners, who have played an essential role within our care communities over the past 13 months. We really value their feedback, and so for a second year in a row, our annual resident and family experience survey includes questions related to this role. We see that this care partner role will not just be in response to a pandemic, but will be part of everyday business moving forward in supporting our residents. The annual surveys were released on November 5th, and we will provide results into the new year. We also held a virtual family meeting on November 9th to give an update to family members and friends of the long-term care homes. Lots of announcements related to funding. On September 16th, we learned from Ontario Health West that we would be receiving one-time funding to support our infection prevention and control personnel capacity, and the amounts are listed there. The PSW wage enhancement extension was set to expire on October 31st, and October 28th, the Ontario government announced that it will be extended again until March 31st, 2022. This funding provides $3 per hour for approximately 50,000 PSWs across the province. Additionally, new funding was announced on October 6th to follow up, and a follow-up memo received on October 15th outlining the ministry and the province's investment in frontline direct care for residents. We are presenting our proposed budget later on in this meeting, and so we'll talk about that a little bit more, but the bullet points in the report outline the 3 streams of funding committed to this investment. Partnerships, we continue to benefit from the various regional and provincial tables that we have the opportunity to participate in. Recently, I was invited to join the Strategic Long-Term Care Advisory Table, the Provincial Strategic Long-Term Care Advisory Table. The goal is to bring together a broad range of expertise and diverse perspectives on long-term care. And so I'm really pleased to be a part of that work. And going forward, we continue to work on our outbreak strategies and hoping to get to pandemic recovery and not just pandemic response in the coming days. And at the bottom of the report is several appendices and attachments that outline these initiatives and updates. Any questions?
Thanks very much, Jennifer, for the report, and certainly congratulations on behalf of the committee. That recognition you received from Advantage Ontario is certainly well deserved. So please pass on to the entire long-term care team our committee's sincere appreciation for the work that's been done with the designated care program. It's wonderful news. Questions from committee members? Christine, go ahead.
Morning, everybody. Jennifer, I also want to congratulate you on being handpicked, shall I say, for the Strategic Long-Term Care Advisory Table. That's quite an accomplishment. And I certainly wanted to just further amplify that. Can you identify, will there be a final report, or what would be the tangible that's coming out of this really amazing provincial initiative?
Thank you very much, Councillor Robinson. Appreciate your comments. There's been one meeting, and so it was just really an introductory meeting. So I look forward to bringing back more information as it becomes available.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Just one other comment, Jennifer. It was great to see that all of our staff are following through with the provincial mandate. With the staff shortages, I don't think anybody wanted to be in a position where staff weren't able to come to work any longer. So it's certainly nice to see that all of our staff are following through with that mandate. Okay, so all in favor of Jennifer's COVID report? That is carried. We now have LTC or LTCR CM 2024-2021 long-term care operational report from August 15th, 2021 to October 14th, 2021 be received for information. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Brian and seconded by Warden. Jennifer, are you starting this one off?
Actually, Dana is going to start it off, and then each of the executive directors have an update to provide.
Okay, we'll turn it over to Dana to start with. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. I want to speak to the quality chart in your package that shows the CIHI data for the first quarter from April to June 2021. And while we acknowledge the green areas in the chart, the data also reflects what the commission report acknowledged, that acuity levels in long-term care have increased, requiring greater levels of care, and with most residents requiring extensive assistance, along with the need for enhanced training and education for staff to address these rising acuities. Renata, the accreditation and quality specialist, and myself in my role as clinical specialist, we're working on supporting the staff with training and education opportunities and focusing on additional quality improvement project areas, in particular, resident lift and transfers, skin and wound care, the IPAC initiatives, for which we've given a bit of an overview, and the medication safety technology program, all in the intent to support quality and provide, color it through the quality and safety for our residents. And then all of these projects will be the focus for the remainder of this fall and winter. And so now, as part of the report, I'm going to pass it on to Stacy.
Thank you, Dana. Is there any questions of Dana before we go on? All right, we'll turn it over to Stacy. Go ahead, Stacy. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll be commenting on the Ministry of Long-Term Care compliance orders and inspection findings summary. So Ministry of Long-Term Care inspectors, we had two here at Lee Manor, and they were here from August 9th to 13th and returned on the 16th and 17th. The purpose of their visit was to conduct a critical incident and a complaint inspection. And while on site, they also conducted an IPAC inspection. It was a very thorough process. And during the inspection, the inspectors spoke with residents and staff. They toured our home. They observed IPAC practices, observed meal services, interactions with residents and staff. And they also reviewed various documentation as well as our policies and procedures. A final report was issued on September the 1st where non-compliances were issued. Links to the detailed ministry reports were included for your review. So I'm just going to kind of provide a high level summary. So I'll start with the infection prevention and control inspection. Written notification and a compliance order were issued and regarding our failure to ensure that all staff execute the IPAC program according to our policy and procedures. So they outlined very specific items that needed to be adhered to by October the 11th. And I can report that all of those have been complied with. We also continue to make IPAC a priority, and we conduct ongoing regular audits and support our staff via our IPAC lead and the rest of the leadership team to ensure that our staff are engaged in the program. Regarding the complaint inspection, we did receive a written notification and a written voluntary plan of correction related to failure to comply with the plan of care. So we had our corrective actions included auditing and reviewing our care plans to ensure that they outline very clear direction for staff to be able to deliver care as it relates very specifically to equipment and devices. And we've also reviewed with our staff and provided re-education regarding the requirement for staff to follow through with all aspects of the care plan as it's outlined. We've also received a written notification and a written voluntary plan of correction related to our failure to ensure that staff use safe transferring position devices or techniques when assisting residents. And our corrective actions also included following up with the staff involved in a critical incident and ensuring that they understand safe transferring techniques. We also received a written notification and written voluntary plan of correction related to cleaning and disinfection according to manufacturer's specifications and best practices for cleaning. And while the inspectors were here, we rectified that immediately, and a disinfectant that was currently in use was replaced with an approved product. And our staff received retraining. Related to the critical incident inspection, we did receive a written notification along with a voluntary plan of correction related to failure to ensure that a resident was protected from abuse. And in this case, it was a resident-to-resident physical altercation. So our corrective actions included connecting with the physician, providing or conducting a medication review, safety checks, also looking from a recreation perspective of distraction activities, and looking at one-to-one support when it's necessary. We also engaged our mobile internal behavioral support team, as well as our internal team, to look at responsive behaviors and noting triggers moving forward. Written notification was also issued related to failure to ensure that a drug was administered to a resident in accordance with the directions for use specified by the prescriber. So a corrective action included meeting with the registered staff to review safe medication practices. And lastly, a written notification and voluntary plan of correction were issued related to failure to ensure that air temperature is measured and documented in writing according to the ministry standards. So again, prior to the inspector's departure, we immediately developed an air temperature schedule and implemented that immediately and reviewed the policy with our environmental staff. Rockwood Terrace also had inspectors on site there from September 20th to October 1st. And they are aware that areas of non-compliance will be issued, but at this point in time, the report has yet to be issued. So that will be reported on in the next, in our next meeting. In regards to our outbreaks, a respiratory outbreak was declared at Lee Manor on the 23rd of September and Rockwood on the 27th. And in both cases, the agent was identified as the rhinovirus, also known as a common cold. And in both care communities, immediately engaged with our public health partners, and all recommendations and control measures as recommended by them were implemented. And the outbreak was declared over at Lee Manor on October 25th and the 21st at Rockwood. And then lastly, I was just going to share an update regarding a Color It story from here at Lee Manor. We've had a new gentleman move in who has quite an artistic background, and with some coaching and some encouragement from our staff, he's willingly found the courage to take on a leadership role here at Lee Manor, and our residents and this particular individual is very excited to be sharing their talents, and will be leading an upcoming painting class to sort of rekindle some artistic abilities of some of our residents and for some to develop a new skill. So we're excited about that. And that concludes my portion of the report.
Thanks very much, Stacy, for the update. Are there any questions from Stacy's report? Stacy, just one, I guess it's a general comment. I saw, it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was a report on long-term care. I think it was maybe on CBC, but they were talking about the lack of follow-up in regards to compliance orders from the Ministry of Health. It doesn't sound, and from my experience here, that's not been the case that we've seen. Can you just speak to that at all and why that concern would have been brought up in other areas?
Honestly, Mr. Chair, I can only speak to like our experience here at the county, and certainly something that we're very proactive and always engaging with our staff and striving for our color at standards. So certainly a compliance order is something that is to be taken very serious and something that we do here certainly at the county. And those deadlines are always adhered to here and come with other penalties. So we're definitely proactive here. And Jen, do you have anything to add?
Sure. Thanks, Stacy, and thanks, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, were you referencing the follow-up from the inspectors themselves?
Yes, follow up from the inspectors. When a compliance order is issued, when the home doesn't take the corrective action, and that's not in reference to our homes. I know we're always taking the corrective action, but in other parts of the province, it appeared like homes weren't taking the corrective action, and there wasn't the appropriate follow-up from the ministry to make sure compliance was adhered to. So it was just a comment that I, just wondered if there was any response.
Yeah, I think that I could just say from our experience that we have had the inspectors do their follow-up. It may not be, if the deadline was October 11th, we might not hear from them October 12th or 15th, but within the next few weeks, even a phone call just to do some confirmation. I do believe, though, that the province's announcement about increasing the number of inspectors will help counter those challenges that they've had in terms of timeliness. Over the years, there have been incidents where we file a report of a complaint, for example, or a critical incident, and 10, 12, 18 months might go by before there was follow-up. So that's something that the province is striving to rectify by increasing their number of inspectors.
Okay, thank you very much. Shannon, is there anything that you want to report on from Grey Gables?
Mr. Chair, I see Warden Hicks' hand up.
Sorry, go ahead, Warden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dana referenced acuity, and I recognize that my question will be somewhat vague, general, I should say. But would it be fair to say that the level of acuity that we see in our long-term care facilities today would be akin to what we saw in hospitals even, say, 10 years ago?
Dana?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'll hand it to Dana and or Renata perhaps, but I would say yes, that is an accurate description of what we're seeing in long-term care.
And through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Warden, for your question. I would agree. Justice Scalise talked about what we are seeing in terms of acuity in long-term care would have in the past been in residents would have been in a hospital-based setting. So when we talk about some of the training and education that we're looking at, some of that is medical acuity, dealing with some technology. Pain pumps wouldn't be uncommon present now in a long-term care, whereas they were in the past. Certain things such as PICC lines, a variety of medical interventions. So that acuity has led us to what you might have seen in a hospital-based setting in the past.
So, Mr. Chairman, that brings me to the question of sort of thinking broadly, industry-wise, I guess. I wonder, what are we doing or what should we be doing with respect to positioning long-term care as part of that continuum of healthcare? Because really, if we're more like a hospital now, then I think we have to recognize that, and some things have to change. Hospitals have doctors, and hospitals have certain levels of nursing care. And if long-term care appears to be heading on that trajectory, what is happening industry-wide to recognize that fact and to have training and procedures and policies and staffing reflect that new reality.
Jennifer?
Great, thank you. Really excellent points, Warden Hicks, and it is being recognized provincially and in the health sector. So, for example, an investment in nurse practitioners. The province has made an investment in hiring nurse practitioners to support long-term care homes. That brings another level of nursing skill and experience that will really benefit these higher acuity and higher needs residents. I also think that we're very well positioned in terms of our building relationships over the past number of months through the COVID pandemic. So building relationships with our hospital partners, our community partners. We are part of the Ontario Health Team, and I think there's opportunity there to be sharing resources and sharing knowledge. We also need to recognize that we're in a staffing shortage. So we need to be able to maximize the staffing skills that are available in the sector to support residents, patients, individuals, not just in organization to organization. So some of it's still a little bit out there because we need to find a way to forge those, really formalize some of those partnerships. But I believe that's what needs to happen. And then, of course, we are really fortunate with the announcement for the Georgian College and the nursing degree and partnerships that we've made with Grey County with Georgian College, opening up the doors to having access to some of that learning facilities, the labs, those types of opportunities. One of the challenges we face in rural Ontario with facing this acuity increase is that we might not have somebody with the same level of acuity all the time. So if you may, I'm not a nurse, so I'm not going to venture to give examples, but to give a high level example, if someone has been giving IVs for 5 years, they're super good at IVs. They're really skilled. It's an easy skill. If they haven't done an IV in 5 years, a year, they need refreshers. The staff want refreshers, they want training, they want to make sure they have the best up-to-date training. So we in rural Ontario need to overcome some of those challenges and barriers that come with the frequency of use of skills and how to keep those skills up. And I think it's our partnerships with each other across the sector that are going to be the answer to that challenge.
Mr. Chairman, I would just add, if recognition is that we're on this trajectory in terms of acuity, and recognizing as well that we know, or we're being told that there's this tsunami coming with respect to dementia and memory care. We have to plan for this. I'm worried about that.
No, that's a very good point, Mr. Warden. And, I'd love to see the difference between an alternate level of care bed per diem at the hospital and the per diems within our long-term care. I think it's likely, I have an idea, but I think there's a huge shortfall in the long-term care funding compared to the hospital. And I think we can continue to advocate, because we are becoming hospitals. I think we can all advocate with the province in regards to that. Funding's the key, and we certainly know we need more funding. We need more hours of nursing and PSW support for all of our clients. So it's something that we can all work towards. Jennifer, you had your hand up again?
I was just going to add that one of the next reports is focused on an update on the behavioral support transition unit, and that's another opportunity that staff are really grateful for committee and council support, because I do think it positions us well to face the changes that are coming.
Okay, thank you. Shannon, is there anything that you want to update the committee on from Grey Gables? Or maybe just go to each executive director before we call the question?
Perfect. Sure. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. I'm happy to report that Grey Gables has enjoyed lots of live entertainment which has been really nice to have music back in the home again for all to enjoy. Some of the residents also participated in a bus tour to Beaver Valley to view all of the beautiful fall colors. During this reporting period, we had the privilege of having Emily Edwards, who came to Grey Gables from Brescia University to complete her 8-week internship, working and learning the role of the nutrition manager. Emily has implemented new ideas and developed strong relationships with all the staff and residents. She hopes to continue her growth and development in long-term care once she has graduated as a registered dietitian. So we wish her well and hope to maybe see her in Grey County in the future.
Thank you very much, Shannon. Any questions of Shannon? Okay. Good morning, Karen. We'll go to you in Rockwood.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and everyone. Thank you. I just wanted to highlight something that happened here in the fall, and it's not new to Rockwood Terrace. We've been participating in the Terry Fox Walk for more than 20 years, and this year was no exception. The residents walked out in our Pine Grove Garden and collectively raised $675 for the cause. The local DERM organizers, Deb and Rob Edwards, were present that day to receive the donation. And so I just wanted to thank all those who participated and donated for that very worthwhile cause.
Thank you very much, Karen. That's good news. Any question of Karen from the committee members? All right, we'll go full circle and back to Stacy on some good news other than compliance stuff from Lee Manor. Go ahead, Stacy.
I've shared my Colorate story regarding our artist.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. All in favor of the operational update? That is carried. Thank you. We now have LTCR CM 25-21 regarding the Great Gables Behavioral Support Transition Unit status update. Be received for information. Can I have a mover, please, for that? Moved by Christine and seconded by, I can't see Barb. Sorry, I have to go through some screens. Okay, I think Tolene is with us to provide this report. The floor is yours. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. So I wanted to give everyone an update as to where we are with the status for the BSTU. So we're pretty excited about this. And just to segue from the comments earlier about the acuity and long-term care, I think certainly this pilot and this project is about positioning us not just at Grey Gables and not even just at Grey County, but we really do see it as a way forward to help our local homes across Great Bruce, as well as the province. We're really hoping that this project will help us in that regard. So thank you for your time. So just wanted to let everyone know where we're at. So certainly we've been working really hard on the recruitment and the training with the staff. And so I'll talk about that here today, and as well a little bit about where we are with the budget for it, because there are a couple of challenges there. So as you know, we've got this 2-year pilot that will end in March of 2023. And we've been working at getting the implementation ready. We're very close to our first admission. We're hoping that that will happen in the next couple of weeks. In terms of physical plant, there had to be some small construction projects that had to be done in order to transition Maple Lane home area from a 23-bed unit to a 20-bed unit. So we've done some construction in the building to support the other 2 home areas, adding a resident to each of those areas. So that work has been completed. Recruitment, well, I guess we'll do finances first, sorry. So finances, our budget is $1.286 million for each of the 2 years of the project. For 2021-22, that's looking like we'll come on budget for that. We are concerned through the process, we did discover that we needed a little bit more funding to support the full 2 years. So that will, we estimate that we'll have a shortage of $425,000 in the second year of the project. So we are in constant discussion with the LIN about how we'll work through that shortfall. So we're still working on what that will look like. We still have some time to figure that out, but we are sitting with a bit of a shortfall at this point in time. And certainly we have expressed all the way through the process that we are not looking to do this project with any levy impact. So we're continuing those conversations with the LIN. But this year it does look like we're going to be okay for the 1.2 million. In terms of recruitment, so as we've said throughout many reports and many conversations, and we talked about it today, recruitment is certainly a big challenge across the healthcare sector and certainly in long-term care. We've worked really hard, and I really want to thank the management team at Grey Gables and HR for all their work to work through the recruitment issues. So we've come a long way for recruitment. We still have some vacancies to fill for the BSTU, but for the most part, we're in much better shape than we were at the start. So I'm feeling really good about that. We still have 5 PSW vacancies to fill. And the RN vacancies are filled for the BSTU, but it is impacting the coverage for the home itself. So we're still working on replacing those folks who internally want to work in the BSTU, but we need to have the coverage in the building. So that's a bit of a recruitment challenge that we're experiencing at the moment, and working with HR to manage that process. Recreation and leisure, we have 1 position left to fill, 1 part-time position left to fill. So, and the RPN is fully staffed. So the supplementary staffing for the BSTU, so our funding is still done through the normal process with all long-term care homes. So the base funding for the 20 beds is still the same. It's still based on CMI, based on our Ministry of Long-Term Care funding. But the supplementary staffing, so that extra staffing, is what's being funded through the LIN. We're looking at, our proposal is that we will have an additional 1.5 PSWs on days, 1.5 additional PSWs on evenings, an additional PSW on nights, an RPN dedicated days, evenings, and nights to the unit, as well as 1 RN shift per day, and a recreation staff on days and evenings, 7 days a week, as well as a unit coordinator. So over and above what the ordinary staffing would be for that 20 beds. So as I said, we're looking at 5 PSW vacancies and then coverage for the RPN, or the RN in the rest of the building. And then in terms of staffing and training, we've been doing a lot of training. So we've had, so far this year, for this quarter, we've had 151 days of training that we've provided to our staff, which is a tremendous amount of time, as you can imagine. We're focusing on a number of key areas that help staff have some increased understanding and increased skill set around behavioral management. So gentle persuasive approach, which is a pretty common tool that's used across long-term care. We're focusing on getting all the staff re-educated in that program, and then it's a 2-hour refresher every year. So gentle persuasive approaches, PIECES training, which is a registered staff component. It teaches a holistic approach to care, understanding where people are coming from a physical aspect, from an emotional aspect, etc. So we've had a number of our staff go through that as well. We still have a couple of people to get through it, but we're almost finished. You First is the non-registered version of the PIECES training. So that's actually starting on Monday. So we have some team members going through that on Monday, as well as the first week of December. Dementiability methods. And that's a really, really interesting and unique way of looking at why a person is behaving the way they are. So we've had a number of staff go through that training. About, it's in the report, I think it's about 40 people have gone through that training so far. And it's a full 2-day training, and it really helps staff understand and come up with sort of meaningful ways of spending our day. So it really helps residents have a better quality of the experience for the day. And then we'll be looking at some TIPA Snow training as well. So we're just currently reviewing all of her program to determine what modules we'll implement with the staff. So as I said, that's 151 days so far of training for the staff this quarter. So I'm pretty excited about that. We're continuing to communicate about the BSTU across the sectors. So I've met with the home and community care support services, care coordinators and managers. We've met with the mobile BSO team, implementing where we're at with implementation for the BSTU. And then finally, obviously we need to be thinking about what our quality indicators will be for the unit. So some of it will be the traditional indicators that we look at with CHI, so worsening behaviors, use of antipsychotic medication, that kind of thing. But we also want to be looking at how successful the person is when they leave the unit. So I really think that that will really help us understand that we've made a difference for these residents and when they go back home or when they go back to another long-term care home. And that's kind of my summary. If you have any questions.
Thanks very much, Talene, for that summary. Questions from committee members? Talene, I had a question in regards to, is there any training for the staff on, the prevention and management of aggressive behavior? Like are restraints going to be happening, in this unit? And, how do we protect the staff and clients, when they become aggressive?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the GPA training actually teaches a lot of that. So gentle persuasive approach training teaches staff about dementia. So it teaches you what dementia is, what to look for, what is the underlying meaning for the behavior, because it really is about getting to understand that piece, and then we can be preemptive. And then the other piece that it does teach is it teaches people how to manage if there is a situation. So it does teach staff how to avoid getting into a dangerous situation. But if it does happen, it teaches you how to get out of like if a resident grabs you, how to get out of those holds. So it does teach a lot of that as well. It's 2 or 3 hours out of the 8-hour training is spent on that. So that's a really important piece. In terms of restraints, we're still bound by the Long-Term Care Homes Act. So we don't use physical restraints other than in very specific circumstances. So we still have to meet the regulatory requirements as to restraint. So residents are not restrained physically unless it meets that criteria under the Act. And there's always environmental restraints. So we have, the doors to the building are coded and you can't get out and that kind of thing. And then chemical restraints is another type of restraint. And again, it does have to meet the requirements under the Act. And follows the doctor's order and prescriptions. And we have to do assessments. We have to try all kinds of other alternatives before we move to a restraint scenario. But certain kinds of restraints are prohibited under the Act. So we can't tie somebody to the bed, for example. That's not allowed.
Okay, thank you very much. One other question I had, in your report, you talked about some minor changes to the building. Our overall bed count. Now, if we went down, we've reduced down 2 in the behavioral unit, but we were able to add those beds in the other 2 units. That's correct?
Correct. Thank you so much for that question. So absolutely, Greg Gables is a 66-bed home, and that hasn't changed. So it's just that Maple Lane will go to 20 beds, but the other 2 units are 23 beds each. So that it still maintains the 66-bed complement for the building.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. Is there anything else from committee members? All right, all in favor of that report? That is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we have LTCR CM 26-21 regarding the long-term care recruitment and retention update be received for information. Can I have a mover, please, for that? Moved by Dwight and seconded by Warden Hicks. And Jennifer, are you taking us through that? One of the Jennifers?
I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And
thank you, Jennifer.
And the other Jennifer is on standby to help answer questions and highlight anything if I might miss it. So this is a significant report that I'm going to share my screen. There's a lot of details in this report. And I just want to acknowledge that it's, it's a couple of pages long, but it really reflects a huge amount of effort, commitment, staff time, knowledge, resources over a partnership between human resources and every member of the leadership team in each of the homes. And then also, it impacts the payroll team and the finance team. And so this is a culmination of a dedicated commitment to recruitment and retention. And it's a really good news story. We don't have all the answers, but we felt, as we discussed before, that it's really important to highlight this work because it really does have impact, and we need to be acting today to be securing our future, as we've discussed, into tomorrow. So I'm going to share my screen, I think. Let's see how this goes. Okay. So now I'm not going to be looking at you because of the way my screen is set up, I think. Can someone just give me a thumbs up that you can see the report? Okay, great.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, thank you so much. So as I mentioned, this is an update on our strategies and initiatives to date in recruitment and retention. So it's no surprise that we've been discussing for a long time staffing levels persistently being a struggle in all healthcare sectors. And I did just want to clarify from our discussions earlier today that unfortunately 20 team members across the 3 homes chose not to comply with our with the ministry's mandated vaccine policy. And so they have left will be leaving the employ. They have until December 13th to make their final decision. But I just wanted to clarify that, Chair Mackey, from our earlier discussions. And that's just one other challenge that we're facing in healthcare in terms of recruitment and retention. So back in 2019, the long-term care department created a long-term care task force on unfilled shifts, really focused on understanding the contributing factors and to find possible solutions to help us optimize our staffing complement to support recruitment and retention of our team members. The task force members were frontline team members, leadership, and union representation. By October 2019, we had themes and next steps identified, and we began focusing on scheduling for work-life balance, recognition and retention, workload and burnout, childcare, and collective language concerns. The task force was paused due to the pandemic, but as we discussed, it's important to highlight that efforts on these topics are ongoing. Many strategies are underway and are highlighted in the coming paragraphs. It's important to acknowledge that the health sector in particular continues to face a critical shortage. In October, the Ministry of Long-Term Care announced 3 new funding investments that supports the commitments of the province that they outlined in their staffing plan, which was released in December. This investment supports increasing staff levels for registered nurses, registered practical nurses, PSWs, allied health professionals, as well as an investment in education and training in staff and long-term care. So on this page are some statistics to give you a sense of what's been happening January to October 31st. So in total recruitment, there's been a recruitment of almost 160 new team members across the 3 homes across a variety of departments. Terminations really refers to a number of reasons that people might leave employ, so retirement, resignation, termination, and there's been a total loss of 94 team members across the 3 homes. So we have had a net gain, which is good. Number of interviews. This chart reflects the interviews that have been conducted and supported by the HR generalist, which was a new position in, Jen might have to help me, 2020, I think, or possibly 2021 to help support this initiative. And so this really reflects that, the support of the HR generalist, and doesn't reflect any other interviews that managers from various departments may have been conducting on their own as well. So a significant amount of effort, 223 interviews just focus really on personal support workers and care support assistants. So just wanted to highlight some of our efforts, and our Color It Your Way mission and promise is our culture shift from the medical institutional model of care to a holistic, person-centered, relationship focused model. We've been on this path of change since 2014 and have historically been recognized with a Culture Change Award. The Color It Your Way promise is described below, and we've begun applying this to not only the resident experience, but also to the staff member experience. And I can't emphasize this enough. In a time when there is great competition for skilled and caring healthcare workers, it's the work experience that we're able to offer people that will ultimately keep them in our organization. People may start a job for the money, or but they stay for how they feel at work. They may need to feel valued. They may need to feel that they're contributing, appreciated, that they have opportunity for growth. And that's really what keeps people in our organization. And so this is our promise. So when we apply it to team members, does the staff member feel that they're part of a community? Do they feel they have opportunities? Do they feel they have good leadership? And do they have an opportunity to be a leader themselves? Is it a safe and a quality workplace? Do they feel that they're important, that they're the center of decisions that we make that affect them directly? Are they in relationship? Do they feel that they work for an organization that has integrity? And do they feel that there's a future, that they're part of something leading into tomorrow? So I'm really excited about how our philosophy supports not just the resident experience, but also the experience for each of us as we work in this organization. Moving on to wellness and operational supports. We continue to support our team members with educational leaves of absences. So this really supports this grow your own idea of how do we help bring people into a field that they maybe have never considered before, and then give them the support and the flexibility to follow that path. So an example is our care support assistants that are going back to school to be PSWs or in nursing programs or in food service worker programs, and then being able to offer them work during their summer breaks. And I had mentioned at a previous meeting that we conducted student exit surveys to get more information about what the students' experience has been. And I'll be looking forward to bringing back some more details about what we heard. We've also identified that we have opportunities to make improvements with our orientation program, and are planning in the new year to offer an enhanced Color It Your Way orientation, really focusing on the language we use, additional education related to communication, mental health, healthy workplace, understanding dementia, and reintroducing our Color It coaches. So those are team members that we rely heavily on to orientate new staff. And we think it's important to give them an investment of education and training on how to do a great orientation. What can we learn from them in all their years of orientating that we can build in and have that applied consistently across all three homes. We've also introduced new employee experience surveys, and we'll be releasing those in the new year. So we'll be doing 3 intervals. We'll be checking in with people at 1 month, 3 months, and 6 months. And this will really help us do some reflection and make necessary changes to our orientation program. We continue with our stay interviews. This is an approach that we learned through the Harvard learning opportunities that we had with the Harvard program here at Grey County. And it is aimed at new employees and also existing employees to say, what keeps you at Grey County long-term care? Why do you stay? What do you love? And let's make sure, we think we know, but it's really good to hear from people so that we really know. And then exit surveys also are a great way to give us information about where we might make improvements or where there may be some barriers for team members. Innovative scheduling. This is only 3 bullets, but this was a huge project. So creative scheduling has been introduced in collaboration with our union partners to promote work-life balance and offer consistency in staffing. So there's been the introduction of permanent and temporary 12-hour shifts. Also introducing full-time 8-shift lines that have full benefits created with more permanent full-time positions in our staffing model. So this was really meeting that goal of a little bit of flexible scheduling. Some people can't do the 10 shifts pay, but really wanted 8 shifts, but we're looking for options with benefits. And that's been introduced primarily at Rockwood Terrace. And then the weekend angel, weekend warrior positions that help support our weekend coverage. And this position was offered both internally and externally with comprehensive benefits. Leadership training and support. The leadership teams have been working flat out in terms of COVID response and also balancing the day-to-day and staffing challenges. And each home's leadership team, and we've talked about this before, participated in some color-it sessions and some leadership growth sessions. And really, it's important that we support our leaders in being able to face the challenges and the opportunities that are ahead of us. Getting our name out there, making sure in this very competitive market that people know what we have to offer as an employer. So all 3 homes have had sponsored targeted advertisements on Indeed, Facebook, Instagram, and ongoing various healthcare boards like the Southwest Healthline, Health Force Ontario, the Y, local colleges. We did a recent campaign, a radio campaign, as you may have heard our ads on the local radio. We also, this section here, working with our communications department, they have done an amazing job in creating 3 new videos. They're cute little animated videos that talk about the opportunities to be a PSW, a care support assistant, or a food service worker, are the videos we have now. They've been shared on Facebook and can be accessed on the Grey County webpage, and they're linked in this report if you want to have a look. And great job to the communications team for a job well done. We participate actively in job fairs, which have been virtual. So really taking things, learning a whole new way of doing a job fair, and really grateful for Mel, our HR generalist, who supported that. A referral bonus program is developed for current staff to refer qualified candidates to HR to help, and if the candidate is successfully onboarded. This program is in process of being introduced in the new year. Continuing to create secondary student placements, co-op placements, is a really great opportunity to enhance recruitment. 2 recent co-op placement students have gone on to graduate from the PSW course and have now returned to work with that same long-term care home. And one of our Grey County PSW coordinators, one of our leaders, has been invited to join the Georgian College PSW Advisory Committee, which is a really great opportunity to help shape and support the educational needs locally and assist in influencing how we grow PSWs locally from our community. So many partnerships. One exciting one is the partnership with Georgian College and the YMCA with the Essential Skills Program. This focuses on introducing individuals to healthcare through the care support assistant role. The program has attracted incumbent staff and new team members to enroll in a micro-credential certificate that they get through Georgian College. The Essential Skills Certificate also earns a credit towards the PSW program if they choose to further their education. And this whole program is generously funded by the Ministry of Labor. So a student's able to get their essential skills micro-credential at no cost. And we have supported team members in accessing that program so that it is free training. And we've done the background work to help get them linked with the right people so that it makes it as easy as possible for them to access this free training. Our 3 homes on their own have referred 18 staff members to the Essential Skills Program. 9 have successfully completed it. 4 are close to completion and 13 are enrolled for December. And I think somewhere we lost 1 in there. 3 CSAs from Rockwood Terrace have enrolled in a fully government-funded PSW training through our partnership with Gates College. And this program includes an online class training and placement that's completed at Rockwood Terrace. We continue to partner with Georgian College to host PSW and RPN students for their clinical placement. And often we are able to recruit and add to our team permanently the students that do their clinical placements with us. We also have expanded our placements to include Georgian, not just Georgian, but also Conestoga College and some private career colleges. And we're continuing to partner to see how we may offer opportunities to students locally or people who are interested in moving to this area. Our union and employer partnerships, we focus on our relationship with our union partners from an interest-based perspective. And we have had great success collaborating where the outcomes are mutually beneficial for union, staff, and leadership. We've really worked together coming up with some innovative solutions that have been mentioned above, and we continue to work with them and brainstorm with them on this critical challenge. And coloring it into tomorrow, we are implementing additional supports to our team by adding an additional HR generalist, and the intent is of that additional team member is to really support the work that has been highlighted that continues to be ongoing. So in summary, we welcome the Ministry of Long-Term Care's commitment to the additional funding and support to enhance the resident experience and the team experience. We do remain concerned about our access to health human resources locally in order to fulfill that commitment, but we continue to work with the province and our community sector partners to find solutions and strategies to attract more staff. We remain committed to our Color It promise for our team members to create a work environment that is fulfilling, meaningful, and rewarding, and offers opportunity to color it into tomorrow. And here's the links to the videos, and I will stop sharing my screen. And thank you very much for your time. As I know it took a few minutes, but these are really important initiatives, and I wanted to have a chance to share them with you.
Jennifer, that's a great report. You know, this committee, you know, I think it was a year and a half or a couple of years ago, you know, when we were talking about, you know, this work, and it's nice to see, you know, all the successes that you've had in, you know, trying to recruit. So certainly very encouraging going forward. Questions from committee members? Brian, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jennifer, that's a great report. You mentioned staff burnout, but kept on trucking there. And I just wondering if you can talk a bit about that. And second part of the question, between staff burnout and staff shortages, does that have any effect on care?
Yeah, thank you so much, Councillor O'Leary. The two go hand in hand, most definitely. And I will look to Jen Moreau to help fill in any gaps that I may leave out. We're so fortunate with the County of Grey to have the support of Council for the Employee Assistance Program, and we make sure that we have the cards in our desk drawers and able to access that and provide that information to staff. Certainly staff working short and working at 21 months into a pandemic brings additional risk to that feeling of burnout or exhaustion, and the two go hand in hand. We never stopped doing the kind of the recognition events. They looked slightly different during the pandemic, but the teams work hard to recognize the efforts of every team member as often as they can, but bringing back the formal wellness program with the wellness committee and structured formal initiatives, I think is something we are planning to do into the new year. And I'll maybe pass it to Jen if through you, Mr. Chair, if she has other things to add.
Okay. Thanks, Jennifer. Morning, Jen.
Good morning. And through you, Mr. Chair, yes, burnout is a real and apparent factor for both our frontline staff and our leadership team. The one thing, as you've all read this report, is we've done all of these initiatives and we've done it through a pandemic when many of our leaders aren't getting the time off that they earn or deserve, because it is all hands on deck through our staff shortages and the mandatory vaccination policy. So without that colorate philosophy, I think we would have been in a lot of trouble. And not to mention the fact that Jen and the leadership team have had to train me on the patient Bill of Rights. They've trained me on what it looks to be a leader in long-term care during a pandemic. So thank you to the leadership team for that as well. We do focus using our colorate philosophy on burnout with our staff. We are kind, we are compassionate. We're aware that when things don't go right, when we have a colorate miss, that we need to be extra kind and compassionate with our staff because they aren't always having their best day, even though they put a smile on their face and take such excellent care of our residents. So it is something that we are constantly focused on and we're constantly talking about. And I, in particular, am hoping that our HR generalists that we're bringing in for 12 months using COVID Restart Fund money can help our leadership team as well to develop and support wellness programs for them. So it is something we are constantly focused on, but it is a real and apparent factor of life after 21 months of a pandemic.
Thank you. Brian, anything else?
No, that's good. Thanks, Jennifer and Jen. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Other questions from committee members? Sorry, did I see your hand, Warden?
No, I didn't put up my hand, but I will I don't have a question. I just want to say this is really important work. And thank you. It's a very good report. It's good to see our attention to this. It's critical. And yeah, thank you again.
Okay, thanks. Jen or Jennifer, in the report, you talked about the flexibility in being able to go down to an 8-shift line and still have full-time benefits. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit? Or are we talking 32 hours a week, or what is the lowest threshold to still be able to be classified as full-time and have benefits?
Jen, are you
go ahead.
okay if I take this? So through you, Mr. Chair, the 8-shift line, so normally it would be based on a 10-shift line. So if you consider 10 as being 100%, 8-shift line is 80%. So that does work well for our folks that are reaching the end of their career, and also folks that might be in the middle and have childcare needs and resources that they look after. It was a way of us focusing on how do we pull up the part-time staff that might want to pick up a shift or two more, and bringing them up to a level that they have some benefits that support them. So paid vacation, paid sick time, the sort of wellness benefits that really support the staff and provide such a great benefit for them that really extends into their family life to provide more wellness at home as well. So we've been able to achieve that. Rockwood Terrace, Karen is a wizard when it comes to scheduling and works so well with her union partnerships and was able to bring this into place. And we were able to provide that. So if staff are picking up additional shifts, if there is a time when they're able and willing to pick up a shift, we don't pay overtime for the 9th and the 10th shift. It's only above that. So it does work out quite well for us. And yes, the benefits are an additional cost, but we have always found that if we invest it in our staff for a benefit perspective, it provides such a great return on investment for us in the long run.
Thanks very much, Jen. I think it's a great idea to have that flexibility and to be able to have a reduced number of hours per week. I think it works out well so thanks for that initiative. The other question, I guess, committee members have asked about the 3 different unions that we have within our long-term care. Have there been any further discussions there? Or maybe, I'm not sure if that's a question I can ask in open session, but I know it's been brought up before, just some of the lack of flexibility because of the 3 different unions. Jennifer, are you able to comment on that? Or Jen?
Yes, I can comment on that. So we have just settled contracts with our Unifor at Rockwood, with Grey Gables, and with Lee Manor. So for our more practical staff, we have both OPSU and Unifor, and then we have ONA. So I think everyone is aware that we are headed to binding arbitration in May of next year with our ONA members. They do bargain as a group. So we have individual collective agreements. However, when they come to the table, they bargain as a group. The initiative that we're taking on in the HR department is to do a cost comparison and a chart to see where we have differences with our Unifor and our OPSU group. And if there's any entertainment with the two OPSU members to start bargaining together like we've seen at ONA, we think it would present a unified front for them and provide some benefits for both them and ourselves. There is no way that we can, at this current point in time with the Labor Relations Act, force them into being a combined union all in one, but there are ways and initiatives where we can find some efficiencies by working together. And one of those big things is with our two OPSU groups that look after Lee Manor and Grey Gables. If we can at least say to them, hey, your contract is coming up in a year, your other contract is coming up in 2 years, can we meet in the middle and bargain these together? They don't necessarily have to say yes. However, if we can provide some statistics and some initiatives for their return on investment, we think we might have some movement.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Just scrolling through here, I'm not seeing anything. All right, all in favor of that report? And that is carried. Thanks very much. Do people want a 5-minute break? How's everyone doing? 5-minute break. The warden has a thumb up. All right, let's take 5 minutes, and let's take 8 minutes. We'll resume at 10:50. Okay.
Just a reminder to everyone to please turn off their mics and cameras. Thank you.
All right, it is 10:50. We'll call the meeting back to order. I know we didn't get a 15-minute union break, but we'll have to be satisfied with 8 minutes. We now have long-term care report CM-28-21 regarding the long-term care financial update and year-end projection as of September 30th, 2021 be received for information. Can I have a mover for that, please? Moved by Christine and seconded by Dwight. Thank you. Sorry, I got to scroll through screens. Okay, Joanna, I think this is your report, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Mackey. Good morning, everyone. This is report LTCR CM 2821 long-term care financial update and year-end projection as of September 30th to be received for information. It provides a financial projection to year-end for our homes based on revenues and expenditures to September 30th. We are projecting an operating deficit of $845,000 in total for the 3 homes, but we are expecting to offset that operating deficit with a $97,000 capital surplus. Because some of this deficit relates to COVID, we will be able to fund $353,700 of this deficit with Safe Restart funding to bring the overall deficit to just under $400,000. And that is the amount that will need to be funded from reserves. The total deficit works out to 2.04% difference as compared to the 2021 gross expenditures of just over $36.5 million. So this negative variance is explained by the bullets in the executive summary of the report. I'll just briefly cover each one. The CMI determines the amount of our nursing and personal care envelope. So when we prepared the 2021 budget, we typically use a CMI that's in place at that time. And when the actual CMIs for 2021 came in, they were lower than the existing ones had been. The CMI decrease resulted in a funding reduction of $137,600. The second factor contributing to the projected deficit is a loss of our 5 temporary beds. In March of 2020, to support the province's response to COVID and to expand bed capacity, we were assigned 5 temporary bed licenses, 2 at Grey Gables, 1 at Lee Manor, and 2 at Rockwood Terrace. We built our 2021 budget with the assumption that these licenses would be in place for the year, as at that time the pandemic was very active. But then unexpectedly, the province pulled these licenses in April of 2021. This resulted in a funding reduction of $270,000 compared to what was budgeted. In addition, we also lost the preferred revenue that would have been collected from the residents occupying these preferred beds. And that resulted in $101,700 less in revenue. A third factor contributing to the deficit was the rising raw food costs. Food prices have risen 3 to 5%, due in part to COVID and supply chain issues and shortages. We've also relied more on individualized prepackaged items, which are more expensive and have contributed to this shortfall. Another factor contributing to the deficit relates to challenges with recruitment and retention of qualified staff, which leads to a high dependence on overtime at a rate of 1.5 times the regular rate, or agency staff, which is at a rate of twice the regular rate. So a variety of initiatives and strategies were undertaken in 2021 to reduce unfilled shifts. At Rockwood Terrace, for instance, 12-hour shifts were compensated at 8 hours of regular time and 4 hours of overtime. This initiative was undertaken because of the risk of not being able to provide adequate care to our residents and for the safety of staff. So while this successfully fulfilled our goal of reducing unfilled shifts in the PSW department, unfortunately did create overtime costs without the unfilled shifts to offset these costs. At Lee Manor, we also had a new collective agreement that awarded higher wages to several positions, and those wages were retroactive to January 1st, 2020. Along with other staffing changes, we are projecting $242,000 more in staffing costs than predicted. Apart from all this, materials, services, and purchase services all expected to end the year with a small $10,000 shortfall. COVID expenditures are not expected to have a levy impact in 2021. The ministry is providing us over $2.5 million in COVID prevention and containment funding, but that does leave us approximately a $661,000 shortfall. We are unsure at this point if the ministry will fund any shortfalls like they did in the prior year, but if they don't, we can use Safe Restart to fund these shortfalls. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Joanna, for that update. Questions from committee members? Brian, go ahead.
Joanna, you mentioned rising food costs and the overtime costs, the 12-hour shifts with 4 hours overtime. Do you have a number for those two? Like rising food costs contribute to the deficit, but what is that number? Do you know?
Yeah, for you, Mr. Chair, 84,000 is what we're predicting our food costs will be over.
And then the overtime costs, the extra 4 hours that are on overtime that you weren't expecting, is there a number for that?
Yeah, well, in total, we anticipate 242,000 in costs. So specifically, that was at the Manor, it was 172,700, and at Rockwood, it was 182,100. But then we did have unfilled shifts that offset those amounts.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chair.
Other questions from committee members? Just wondering, the 5 beds that we lost and the 270,000, is there any possible opportunity to connect with the ministry to see if those beds, we know we have a need for additional beds. Is there any opportunity to try and get those 5 beds back? Jennifer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, and I have some information in the proposed budget report coming up. And so we have made connection with the ministry and are very hopeful that we will have the opportunity to retain 3 of the 5 temporary licenses. We no longer have capacity at Grey Gables for the 2 additional beds because of the BSTU pilot, but we still have the opportunity with 1 at Lee Manor and 2 at Rockwood Terrace. And so we've had really positive initial discussions with the Assistant Deputy Minister's staff and are just in the back and forth stage of what that process looks like.
All right, thank you. And just a follow-up question, Jennifer. As the province is funding more hours of care per day, is that going to have a positive impact on our budget going forward?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and I may look to my finance colleagues to help fill in any specific details, but in the first year, yes, because we are being funded to the 3 hours, to the target of direct care hours in the first batch of money. Based on, and this is where I often get it wrong. So Joanna, if you could just help me, based on 2 hours and 45 minutes. Yes, I see you're nodding. Based on 2 hours and 45 minutes of a provincial average. So we were already above that with our COVID containment efforts that we put into place. So that allows us to have an impact on the decreasing the levy contribution in that first year. But as we get up to the 3 and then into the coming years, it will start to level out again. Does that make sense? Perhaps you want more clarification.
No, that makes
okay.
Thanks. All right, any other questions? I'm not seeing any. So all in favor of this update report? And that is carried. We now have a report LTCR CM 27-21 regarding the proposed 2022 long-term care budgets be received. and that the 2022 long-term care budget as presented be forwarded to County Council as part of the overall corporate budget package for consideration, and that staff be authorized to include the redevelopment costs funded from reserve, as well as reduced levy requirements should additional information become available. Can I have a mover, please, for that? Moved by Barb and seconded by Brian. Joanna, is this you again?
I'm going to take this report, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Jen, the floor is yours.
All right. I'm just bringing some notes in front of me, so I won't be able to see all of you. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm presenting the 2022 proposed long-term care budgets. I'd like to thank the finance team, the executive directors and their teams for all of the work over the past number of months. The total proposed budget contains operating and capital expenses of almost $38 million. This includes a net levy requirement of $8 million, which is an increase of $707,500. This has been a tough budget to put together. We're not happy with the bottom line. There have been a lot of changes from the province that needed to be made. One significant change, which we've discussed briefly this morning, is the ministry's commitment to increase staffing levels and to provide more direct care for residents. They have made an investment that has 3 funding streams. And if you scroll to page 37 of your package, table 1 highlights outlines the 3 streams. So there's the direct care, which is RN, RPN, and PSW staffing. The second is allied health professionals. And the third is supporting professional growth funding. The table on page 40 of your package outlines the details of the targets for direct care hours and the associated funding for each home. And the table on page 40 details each home's how they've applied this funding and the direct care hours for each home for the various departments. Now, if everyone could scroll to page 42 of your package, and I'll share my screen. Oh, okay, there we go. Someone's sharing their screen, so that's good. All right, thank you. We're looking now at page 42 of the package, which is the chart that summarizes the overall budget impacts and the details that are noted in the verbiage in the background of the report. So we scrolled past verbiage. It's summarized here in this chart. The increased operating budget levy, that's the first line of the chart, shows the overall levy impact divided by home. The total of $1,074,000 is offset by a reduction in capital expenses of $366,800, resulting in the total impact of $707,500 that I mentioned at the introduction of this report. The top half of this chart is the revenue impacts, and the bottom half are our expenses. So decreased ministry revenue loss of the 5 temporary licenses is itemized here with a total of $333,500. And what goes with it is the decreased other revenue of preferred revenue, which would be the resident portion of the residents living in those 5 temporary beds. So those are bundled together. CMI is unpredictable every year. As an Advantage Ontario member, we have access to a CMI calculator to assist with budgeting. And we use this tool to predict and develop the budget that you see before you. The prediction is that Grey Gables will have a slight increase, but Lee Manor and Rockwood Terrace will have a decrease in the CMI funding. Finally, based on last year's experience, we are predicting to receive 1.5% increase in the global level of care funding from the Ministry of Long-Term Care. And that's the third line there. And it's so we don't have that confirmed, but based on our experience, we're predicting that that's the case. The bottom half of the chart shows the increase in expenses. Part of these expenses are outside of our control, such as insurance, utilities, inflation. The corporate interfunctional costs are the costs of back office supports. Interfunctional is primarily information services. So for example, cost per computer or mail account that funds to cost, the cost of running a safe and secure network. The cost of living, the COLA cost, is the 1.62%, which is our cost of living wage increase. Raw food. As you know, the province funds raw food for residents at $9.54 per resident day. Grey County Council has supported this with an additional 18 cents per resident per day. We're finding it extremely difficult to provide the quality food and nutrition that we expect for our residents within that allocation, and staff are proposing to top that up to 68 cents per resident per day, and that's reflected on that line. Infection prevention and control personnel and training increase. The province is funding to support IPAC measures within the home, and that funding fully covers the initiatives at Rockwood Terrace and Lee Manor. So it shows 0 on the chart. Grey Gables receives the least amount of funding and is striving to implement the same IPAC program, and the additional $11,200 that's reflected here supports the shortfall from the provincial funding. Finally, the other column, this reflects the addition of 7 hours per week of dietitian services shared by Lee Manor and Grey Gables, and small increases in supply lines such as chemicals across the 3 homes. Moving on to budget impacts, and maybe we can, well, sure, let's just scroll down to the next page. So moving on to budget impacts, specifically around the capital plan. This committee and County Council approved the 10-year capital plan for long-term care back in July. In the interest of mitigating some of the levy increase for 2022, we've taken a hard look at the capital plan. We have eliminated or adjusted projects that we could while minimizing the impact on the home. As mentioned, this has resulted in a reduction of $366,800 from the capital plan, which offsets the overall levy impact. The projects listed in this report are the remaining capital projects that require a levy contribution or are funded from reserves. If the committee is really concerned about where the long-term care department is hitting the levy, the capital projects listed here may provide an opportunity for further reduction. There are specific projects in each home's capital plan for next year that we could take a look at. For example, at Grey Gables, the Memorial Garden fencing project is a significant project that has been very challenging to estimate the costs. It's been added to the capital plan to provide a second secure outdoor area for residents to enjoy the outdoors. The Behavioral Support Transition Unit residents will be primarily using the current secure outdoor space. Materials have fluctuated in pricing over the past 6 months. Availability of contractors and so on make it difficult to predict. So there may be opportunity to have another look at this project. Additionally, furniture and equipment replacement, railings and balconies are projects focused on aesthetics and general upkeep. Pushing back 1 year may be an option with minimal impact. If we scroll down to the Lee Manor list, please. Thank you. Lee Manor has about $110,000 planned for home aesthetics and upkeep in the floor replacement, draperies and blinds, furniture and lounges. We have discussed the importance of maintaining a home-like space that is competitive in the current market. However, there is opportunity to move this to another year. The whirlpool tubs, which I think are on the next page, are another item that could be pushed to next year as long as the equipment doesn't fail. And finally, Rockwood Terrace already takes that flexible approach in light of redevelopment plans, having capital funding set aside to repair and maintain the home, focusing on the most imminent needs as they arise. And if you don't mind, stop sharing, please. Thank you. And so in conclusion, the team has worked hard to bring you a proposed budget that meets the needs of the residents in the current environment, while being mindful that it's not yet meeting the bottom line that we're content with. We're hopeful that we will be able to work with the ministry, as we've just discussed, to retain the 3 temporary licenses, which will make a significant impact. And in the meantime, we continue to look for other opportunities to reduce the overall levy impact. Thank you, and happy to open for discussion and questions.
Thanks for that report, Jennifer. Questions from committee members? Barb?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm just wondering if the suggestions that you've made from an aesthetics perspective, Jennifer, in terms of capital costs, might be something to consider. I'm wondering if you have a total for all of those suggestions that you put forward today, and that could be looked at in terms of the overall projected budget.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor Klumpus. I don't off the top of my head, but it will only take a minute. I'm quite confident my team members are furiously calculating that and appreciate that suggestion, and we'll get that information for you.
Thank you.
Other questions from committee members? Christine, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through to Jennifer. On some of the items for each of the 3 community homes, there's a notation in brackets that talk about being carried forward from the previous year. Out of those notations, and recognizing staff has done an incredible job in identifying the works that are required, but is there an opportunity perhaps for an additional review in a carryover to one more year in any of these projects? Recognizing health, safety, compliance with legislation, it's just a global question that I'm asking at this point. Thank you.
Jennifer?
Thank you, and I see CAO Wingrove has her hand up.
Good morning, Kim. Go ahead, please.
Apologies. Good morning, everyone. If I may, just provide a little bit of context here. Recognizing that 2022 is the last year of this term of council, we've asked all of the departments to be very clear about the projects that can be completed this year, because we want to start 2023 with a new council and with a clean slate as much as possible. So we are trying to minimize the projects that get carried over so as not to really burden a new council with foregone conclusions, if you will. Certainly, we know that they always have that discretion, whether or not something's carried over or not, whether they wish to proceed with it. But that was part of the work that we were doing, was to ensure that we've had a couple of tough years with COVID where projects that we wanted to get completed weren't able to be completed in one department or another for various reasons. We've also had projects that when we tendered them in the last little while, the prices came back so significantly different than what the estimates were that we didn't feel it was prudent to proceed. So they're there. So this is really, there's a lot of moving parts to all of this. My hope was from the committee this morning that we could have your support to use our best discretion when we're finalizing these numbers for the county as a whole, so that when we bring back the proposed budget to council, it really does reflect the absolute best that staff can do. There'll be, if we do pull things back out of the capital budget here, certainly we know what those things are, and if it's council's wish, things can be put back in to the budget if they feel that there's the appropriate room to do so. But what we were hoping was that if we could provide any clarity on what individual items are, if that would be helpful. But once you're satisfied that the things that we're proposing are things that you could be supportive of as a committee of management, if the situation required those further reductions, we'd like your support to be able to make those decisions as we try and finalize this 2023 budget. Thanks. 2022, I'm sorry.
Okay, Kim, thank you very much. And certainly we'll try and get that question answered, whether or not the committee can support the best senior management can come up with. Christine, I saw your hand.
Sure. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and CIO Wingrove. Thank you very much for putting the context around that and the approach in terms of flexibility. And certainly I recognize the hard work that has gone into the identification of all of the capital expenses listing. So thank you for that.
So are members of the committee content with the ask from our senior management that they take a second look at this and come back that they've got our support to bring forward a budget that is going to look after our most needy and still look after the necessary capital replacements? Brian, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure what I'm okay with. I guess if staff can do whatever they can do, that's one thing. And I can only speak for myself, but if we end up dipping into reserves, which we're going to do, it would be okay if we just said, you know what, we just went through the COVID thing and it's been a tough couple of years. And I suppose that's what reserves are for. But this overture it's not acceptable, and it's certainly not sustainable. And I want to make sure that's clear. It's just not. So if we're dipping into reserves, then we have to have, and I know there's no guarantees, but we can't do this every year. We can't be sitting at this same spot a year from now. So is there anyone that can say a year from now that we're not going to be doing the same thing, dipping into reserves? Because to me, that matters. Like if we know where we're going to be or close to where we're going to be a year from now, then I'm okay with doing things on the capital. But if not, we're going to have to make some kind of changes. I don't know if I'm making sense or not. I just think it's reserves are for emergencies, and we just came through one, or we're not through it yet. But so I'm okay with that as long as this doesn't continue. But I don't know if anyone can guarantee that it's not going to continue. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Oh, thanks, Brian. Kim, do you want to respond to Brian's comments?
I think Councillor O'Leary makes some excellent points. I think that we've come to a point where we need to really sit down and take a very hard look with regard to the way that both revenue and expenses have been incurred in this department. And certainly we've had a lot of conversations with the people around this table from the staff side. There's a shared understanding and recognition that we need to really make sure that we're not in that situation in the future. I think it also requires much more timely discussions with yourselves so that you have an earlier opportunity to provide direction to staff where we've determined that there is going to be a budget shortfall. I see Mary Lou's hand here as well, and I would like her to provide any insight that she can as well.
Mary Lou, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Yes, it's certainly not the budget we would want to present, and it's a higher increase than I can say I've ever seen. I have a few thoughts going along with what Kim just mentioned. The loss of the 5 beds that we were provided on a temporary license basis, that's more than 0.5% levy increase, because now that's gone. Best case scenario, if we got 3 of those 5 beds back, that would certainly assist this budget. The important thing to recognize when we incorporated the 5 temporary licenses into the budget, it was found money because there was very little expense associated with the additional 5 beds over 3 homes. So it's not like the home incurred, an increase in staffing. It didn't take much extra food. The utilities didn't change, et cetera. So it really was found money in those budgets. And then there's the CMI, which, is difficult to predict. Back in the day, they used to release it the week before Christmas, and we used to anxiously anticipate seeing that because budgets started going in January or early February. So you could make adjustments and it didn't have an in-year budget impact. With regard to the use of reserves, I'll use Grey Gables as an example. Grey Gables has 16 projects budgeted. The levy requirement is $183,500. $73,200 of that is the debenture payment for the roof. So out of the 16 projects, there's just over $100,000 in levy, and the rest are funded from reserve. And you'll see that in the other 2 as well. And a lot of Rockwood is funded from reserve, and it's not spent if it's not required. And of course, they're in a holding pattern. So Karen's been very good about not doing repairs just because the time limit's up, or replacing laundry equipment, et cetera. We're very fortunate that we have the Safe Restart money if there's no additional long-term care funding available. It does put a substantial dent in that pot, though. The other thing I was going to say with regard to Councillor O'Leary's question about the budget and how do we make sure this doesn't happen again. There are certain things that would be beyond staff's control, such as the CMI. They're using the Advantage Ontario calculator, which is giving an estimate. But it's all about how well you play the game in charting and classifying your residents. If you classify and chart appropriately and you capture all their requirements in the acts of daily living, how well they can toilet transfer, feed themselves, et cetera, those all get incorporated into like their acuity level. But the pot doesn't change. And so what happens is if all the other homes become as adept, or everybody figures out what they've been doing wrong, your level of acuity can go up. But if it doesn't go up as much as the provincial average, you actually lose. So it's like being bell curved on an exam. So those are things that, they're doing their best efforts to try and put the appropriate number in there. The other things I can say, I think we could spend some more time and come up with hopefully early warning systems that would give senior management and this committee a more appropriate time in being able to make some decisions on what comes next based on what we're seeing. And then I'll close with the other great unknown is, we run into this as well with paramedic services, your modified duty. All you need is an increase in WSIB claims, people that have been injured outside of work, they're unmodified. That all takes up your budget resources, and they use their best estimates when they prepare a budget into how much modified they will require based on, history as well as knowns at the time the budget's developed. The biggest challenge, I will say, for the county is the 24/7 operations. If somebody on the finance team doesn't come to work today, they're not backfilled. Where you can work short to a certain point in the homes before you have to bring in agency staff. It's certainly not it's a very difficult operation. And we will do our best to try and find other opportunities to look for reductions in their budget.
Thank you very much, Mary Lou. Any follow-up, Brian? Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. So I appreciate those comments. I guess I should say too, like, we as councillors have to take some responsibility here too. Like, the county is spending way too much money on healthcare, which is a provincial responsibility, and maybe we could ruffle some feathers and do our jobs too as politicians, and maybe pushing that a little bit. But I can't help but think that, a big company like Southridge is coming into Owen Sound and building these massive buildings. They're not building them because they're losing $500,000 a year. So I don't know. Can someone answer, what are we doing different than them?
Who's putting their hand up to answer Brian's question?
I know it's tough. I mean, you can't help but think about it. I mean, is it union wages? It's a tough question, but it's something I'd like to know, because they're not building it to lose money.
That's true. Thank you.
Jennifer, go ahead.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor O'Leary. It is a tough question. I think it's a combination of a variety of things. Certainly wages. We've made a commitment at Grey County to have increase full-time staffing levels and consistency of scheduling, making a different work environment for our team members. That comes at a cost. We make a commitment to actively use and fill those shortages with agency, so overtime and agency, and that comes at a cost. And then when we look at we're not talking about redevelopment, but when we look at redevelopment as an example, we discuss what the space needs and what are the equipment and supplies and the investment in capital. And in the new builds, they have new buildings and they don't have that same investment need, but haven't historically always made that same capital investment that the county has made in our buildings and our equipment year after year. Those are just some off the top of my head of a very challenging question. We also know that, unfortunately, in reflecting on the care and service, that the outcomes that happened during the pandemic, it was primarily the model of care that was used in the private sector of these big organizations that had the most unfortunate impact, and we didn't. And across the province, nonprofit, municipal, and charitable homes didn't have statistically those really terrible outcomes. And I'm confident that it's our model of care, and which is an investment that is made. So those are my comments as you raise a very tough question.
Thanks for that, Jennifer. Thanks, Mr. Chair. That's all.
And Jennifer, I completely agree with your comments. The municipal sector, and our municipal sector went through this pandemic, and it's a tribute to all of our staff. We didn't lose a life, and that can't be said for a number of the for-profit. And I think when you look at, you look at the wait lists, the consumer knows where they want to be. At least in Grey County, the wait lists are much longer in the the municipal homes. So again, that's a tribute to the work that's being done, and it's not cheap. The acuity level, you talked about the case mix index. I think that's a system that needs to be completely revamped, because as the warden mentioned earlier, the acuity level across the province in every home is going up. But, you know, Mary Lou talks about the bell curve. The homes aren't being compensated to the degree that the acuity level is going up. So just because it's maybe higher in another home, it doesn't mean that it's went down in any of the other homes. It continues to rise across the province. So I think that's an antiquated system that the province certainly needs to look at. Raw food. Inflation right now over the last year has been about 2.9%. So I can't see where the province is not giving us at least the cost of living increase on the food. But, to think that we can feed someone for less than $10 a day. I mean, we all want our residents, well fed, and, you can't cut back on that. That's a small amount of dollars. And, I remain confident that the people of Grey County are willing to spend money on looking after our most vulnerable. And it's been a tough year, and COVID has certainly increased, our staffing needs and our overall costs. And I'm certainly fine with supporting, the best that the senior management can come up with this year, because I think the people of Grey County want or are not opposed to money being spent on these seniors. That's just my thoughts. Jennifer?
If I see Warden Hicks' hand up, but if I might, appreciate your comments, but I would just like to add, in balancing to my comments to you, Councillor O'Leary, that there are still things that we can learn from our partners in the private sector in terms of fiscal management, and apply some of those strategies to the work that we do without compromising the items that we've discussed. So, I just wanted to add, point well taken in terms of opportunities to look at what we do, and can we do some of our things in a different way without compromising the resident experience or the staff experience.
Thank you. Warden, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And on the 5 beds, I think, Jennifer, if I heard you clearly, you can only accommodate 3 of the 5 currently, correct?
That's correct.
So there's not, we talk about getting back to 5 beds, really is, we're talking potentially 3.
That's correct.
Okay. And Mary Lou, if I'm right here, the figure that I had from 3 years ago, so when I was in 2019, the levy contribution was 6.1 million, and we're talking about potentially 8.2 million now. That's about a 33% increase over 3 years. I don't want to quote inaccurate figures.
Mary Lou?
Just getting that figure. Yes, the operating and capital levy for 2019 was $6,269,000, roughly just under $6,270,000.
Right, so if my math is correct, we're looking at about a 33% increase over the term of this council so far, over 3 years. It's about 11% per year. If we keep going at that rate, we're going to have some.
Go back and take a look and identify. There's also positions that have been added that were not government funded. Yeah, so you're looking at it over a 25% increase.
Go ahead, Warden.
Sorry, so there we have it. I think, Mr.
We can
Chair.
do some comparisons, that's for sure, and we can tell you, where of the substantial changes have occurred. And say back in 2019, your levy contribution for capital was just under 2.2 million. And so that really hasn't changed from 2021. It hasn't gone up a lot. We've been going up about 2%. So your levy contribution for 2019 for operating was $4.1 million, and now it's just over $6 million, so $1.9 million increase.
Warden, go ahead.
I guess the point that I'm trying to make, Mr. Chairman, is that the comments of Councillor O'Leary are.
And sit with the senior leadership team for the homes and come back with some
Just a sec, Mary
comments
Lou.
on where those changes have arisen from. A lot of this will be your union contracts. If they've been getting 1.6 a year, I'd have to go and take a look at our budget document to see what 1.6 equals for the long-term care homes. But when you extrapolate that, part of the problem is if your funding doesn't keep pace with your expenses, and more than 80% of your operating budget is wages and benefits. So unless you look at your service level and your staffing, the other 20% really doesn't provide you much when you have to buy food, you have to have medical supplies, your utilities. It becomes very difficult to identify discretionary items without looking at changing levels of service.
Thank you, Mary Lou. Warden, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I go back to the same point that I've been making, which is Mary Lou talked about an early warning system, and I think we've had it. I think we've had our early warning. We're not on the right path, and we're going to have to take a very, very good look and try to slow this training down, because we can't keep going at the rate that we're going, and have it be affordable. We won't be able to continue on this path. So I think we've had our early warning. I'm glad that staff are going to be going back and taking a second look. Because like I said, I think over the next year, we're probably going to have to really get into the nitty gritty and talk about, how do we slow this thing down? Can't keep going like this.
Thank you. Mary Lou, you had mentioned there were some additional staff. Would you be able to, over the next 2 or 3 weeks, provide to the committee, where the significant changes have been from 2019 through until now? I certainly know that, it's from a quality of care standpoint. The Committee of Management has authorized a number of positions corporately to assist with long-term care. And now, it's hitting home, but it's not like some of these positions weren't approved by this committee and by county council. So, just some comments, but it would be nice to see where that overall amount has changed and what the primary issues have been. Other comments from committee members? Dwight, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been a business person all my life. And Kim and Jennifer, I don't envy your business you're in. It's a thankless business. I have great confidence in Kim and your team that you'll come back to this committee with recommendations on how we can solve the problem we know we have. But it's a thankless job, and I wish you all the luck. Look forward to your response.
Thank you. Christine, did I see your hand earlier?
No, Mr. Chair, you did not see my hand. What you probably saw was me taking notes. So thank you.
Thank you. So any other comments from committee members?
Mr. Chair, I do see CAO Wingrove with her hand up.
Oh, all right. Kim, go ahead, please.
Thank you. And in follow-up to your question to Mary Lou about wanting some assessment of positions, et cetera, I think one thing that might be helpful is if we could have a committee meeting ahead of the county budget meeting at the end of January, so that this committee has an opportunity to just be briefed on where we get to finally with the long-term care budget for 2022. We'll take you through the numbers. We'll take you through what plans we've been able to make over the next couple of months as far as opportunities to restrain the increases that we're seeing. So if that would be good for this committee, you know you're going to see a significant increase. I think that's pretty much unavoidable out of this department, but where we can make some changes, we will, and hopefully we'll get new or good information back from the province that will provide some relief. But I know from the discussions that have happened so far, the ministry's process is a long one. So we may go into the budget assuming that we might see another couple $100,000 out of the province at some point, but we're probably not going to see it before the end of January to put into this budget. So just to say, if that would be acceptable to all of you, if that would help you to feel confident going into those discussions at the end of January, we can pull together another meeting just for the purpose of reviewing the numbers as they stand before that day.
Thanks, Kim. I certainly would appreciate having that meeting prior to, so the committee has a better chance to look at all the numbers and ask further questions. Certainly nice going to county council, as a committee, knowing that we've all received and have a good understanding and hopefully can support, the final figures that this committee approves. So can I just get a thumbs up from other committee members to have a follow-up meeting when we have more numbers back from Mary Lou and the senior staff? Okay, I'm seeing a commitment from the committee members to have an additional meeting, so if that could be arranged whenever you've got that report available, that would be great. Thanks. Any other questions in regards to this? I think we will be able to ask those questions when we get that further report. So I'm not. The resolution probably should just be deferred then, shouldn't it?
Heather and I were actually just discussing the possibility of whether a deferral would work until that meeting. So if that's the committee's wish.
If I may, I don't think that will work for finance. I think that in order to get, we have traditionally put the budget out at the beginning of January so that it was public and people had plenty of time to review it. So I think what I was proposing was absolute best efforts between now and the end of December to get numbers straightened away. Those numbers will appear in the budget that the county releases in January. We'll brief the committee between the beginning and the end of January before the county budget meeting. If there are further changes that the committee wants to see or any member of council wants to see to the budget, then we'll be able to make those changes at the budget meeting.
Okay, so the motion as reads now, that staff be authorized to reduce levy requirements should additional information become available. That sort of satisfies that plan then.
Yeah. Okay, are the mover and seconder okay with the resolution as it stands? I'm not sure who that was again. Brian, was that you?
Barb and Councillor Crumpus and Councillor O'Leary.
Brian and Barb okay with that resolution as it stands?
I'm good.
Barb?
To as long as we do get another crack at this, as the CAO has suggested. I'm really concerned about dipping into reserves and at this stage with our redevelopment costs coming forward down the road as well. So yes, I can still support this resolution going forward.
All right, thank you. Kim, is there any chance, the latter part of December that we could have this information back in front of the committee prior to January? Or Mary Lou?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The timeline that we're striving for, so the budget meeting is January 28th, that we would have it turned on the county website on January 7th. So that means that we're working with communications the week of December 13th in order to put everything together so that they can build the package, put the bookmarks, et cetera, make it all look nice and pretty with their cover pages. So my intent is that we're going to have the numbers that we're presenting in the budget by December 13th. Council is getting a report from me on December 9th, which I should be done writing this Thursday as to where we're at and talking about the pressures on the budget. So the things that are beyond our control, such as the commitment to asset management, the affordable housing increase, the cost of living increases that have been given to the non-union as well as the union agreements. Just kind of laying the foundation of, here's where we're at, or here's where it appears we're going to be at, and here are the items that are making up that before we even start.
All right, well, thank you very much. So as Barb mentioned, we will get this other opportunity to look at this. So all in favor of the motion? That is carried. So Kim, you're proposing that our next meeting date, it is scheduled for January 18th, but we'll likely try to have one prior to that. Is that correct?
That 18th might actually work well.
That'll still work?
I think so.
Okay. All right. So, well, we'll go with January 18th, and if that needs to change, we can have those discussions. Is there anything else from any members of the committee or staff? Not seeing anything. Thank you, everyone, for your time this morning. This was a larger agenda, and I want to just wish everyone a Merry Christmas and have a happy holiday. I mean, I'm going to see some of you before, but other members of the long-term care team, please try and get some well-deserved time off over the Christmas holidays. And again, thanks very much for all of your efforts. And it is 10:48, and we stand adjourned. Take care, everyone.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
You need a mover and a seconder, sir, to adjourn.
Thank you, Heather, for keeping me straight. I'm able to adjourn in our own township on my own. So can I have a mover, please, to adjourn? Moved by Barb and second, I'm sure Dwight's got his hand up if I get to his screen. All in favor? That is carried. Thanks very much.
Thank you.